On this fragile another freaking week, another loaded sports week. We've got all kinds of stuff going on. We had baseball underway yesterday. Half of the Sweet 16 was really good. Half of it not so good. Unless you're a fan of the Arizona Wildcats, then it was a freaking party all night long. Does that team not look like an absolute behemoth? For lack of a better term, so much to talk about today, so many things to talk about. I haven't dropped an edition of He Said What in a long time. I've got might be the best one we've ever had all time from yesterday. In reaction to what was happening in opening day from the place that you would have least likely expected it. We'll get to that here in a minute. Minor League Baseball continues to just absolutely impress. Why the hell is he talking about minor league baseball when MLB? Just trust me on this one. You're going to want to know that one as well. I'll give you an update on what's going on at the Texas Children's Houston Open, as well as Mike versus Mac. Happy to say that it looks like my consecutive week streak of guys missing the cut will continue, unless Wyndham Clark plays one of the best rounds of golf in the history of a guy playing a round of golf greatly on the PGA Tour. Of course, we'll get into some more thoughts on today's Sweet 16 games, as we've got games, let's see, off the top of my head, Washington, D.C. for the East Regional and Chicago, Illinois for the Midwest Regional. I can't wait to see the crowd disbursement tonight at the United Center. Michigan fans, Iowa State fans, I hope we get to see that again on Saturday. We'll have some thoughts on that. And as I told you guys early in the week, very excited for this one. It's been a long time coming. Our guy, Jared Smith. You've heard us talk about him a lot. We'll finally get a chance to get him on the program. Very excited for that. He'll be joining me just past the top of the hour. We'll talk a little bit about how the tournament's going for him, what his thoughts are going forward. Also, it's a new baseball season, so we'll get his thoughts on how to attack baseball season. I had a lot of friends yesterday, myself included. Everybody's excited. It's just another thing to bet. There's a strategy to baseball. There's 162 games. It's a long, long way to go. Bankroll management is something that we talk about. You hear the people that we refer you to talk about, guys like Jared, our guy Bill Krakenberger. It's a long season, man, and there is a strategery, as we like to say on the show, that goes with that. So he'll have some thoughts on that and just the state of sports gambling as a whole, because Jared is one of those people that is... I've been following him personally for a long time. I know the guys are following him now. Several people you don't see on our show that are following him now. And he's got his hands in a lot of stuff. But he is a guy that's literally seen the sports gaming side of things blow up, and he's got some interesting thoughts on it. There's not many things Jared doesn't have his hands in right now. So, again, super excited to get him on. He'll be with me just past the top of the hour here. Feel free to comment along if you're watching along. What'd you feel about opening day? I laughed my ass off this morning because the Giants basically get to act like opening night never happened, because technically it is opening day for the Giants and Yankees today, who didn't play yesterday in baseball's tremendously idiotically constructed schedule to open the season. We also have Athletics and Blue Jays in action today, Rockies and Marlins in action today for the first time, Royals and Braves in action today for the first time. Everybody else has already got a game under their belt that is playing. I told you guys in our baseball preview that Diamondbacks bullpen was, well, for lack of a better term, ass. And they took that baton last night and ran all over it. And I sent a text to the guys last night. The D-backs were up 2-0. Looked like Gallen was leaking oil a little bit. I took the Dodgers on a live line in the total over 7.5. Right before they pulled Gallen. Well, the Dodgers ended up winning that game 8-2. Again, not saying it's foolproof. Last year I had a friend that dabbled in waiting till the Dodgers were losing in a game and then live lining the Dodgers on the money line all the time. He gave up on that about halfway through the season. I will target this Diamondbacks bullpen because it is terrible. It is downright freaking terrible. Terrible. By the way, give me more Charles Barkley on college basketball coverage. I can't get enough of him on college basketball coverage. I just his love for the game and his general ability to not be afraid of making fun of himself at any time is tremendous for the game. Before we go any farther, though, and last week I kind of forgot about this until halfway through the show. Mac was with me last week on Friday. It is Friday, and you deserve this. You made it. You made it. It's a great time to be a sports fan. We've got baseball in tow. I'll have some thoughts on the general schedule making there because it's the only sport that says, hey, we're back, and then hits the pause button right away. Like the way this whole opening day weekend schedules worked out, I don't mind the standalone game on Wednesday. I don't. Would I have done it in an interleague fashion? No. Do I think there's legs to what TJ suggested for it, like the NFL does, put your defending champ on your opening night thing? Yes, I'm sure that'll probably be the way it goes. That being said, however, this was kind of, as baseball is still kind of slopping together their media deal, not really super well thought out going into this first year. I also have some thoughts this weekend on the whole Netflix thing. If you missed that from the other day, we'll get that back up on our social channels. Follow us on all of our social channels at Mike Arana Show everywhere but Snapchat because we're not 12 and Snapchat sucks. Again, sign up for our newsletter. There's gems in there. There's also turds in there when it comes to some of the betting picks at times. But again, we're not smart enough to spam you. It comes out once a week. It's free. It gives you a heads up of who's coming out on the show this week. You would have known Tuesday Jared was going to join me today. And we're getting closer and closer to swag. And if you're on the newsletter, you're going to be the first people to know. And you're going to be the first person to go, hey, I got a Mike Arana Show shirt. I took some shrapnel last night. It was funny. One of the comments we got on our video of why I thought Arkansas was a team that had the potential to carry themselves through the tournament. And of course, everybody comes out of the woodworks when you get a pick wrong. Nobody says anything when you get a pick right. Just fine. We get plenty of picks wrong. We're not handicappers. We've told you that a million times on the show. That's why we refer you to the people that we do when you're looking for that dead-on insight and everything else. But I thought Darius Acuff Jr. was good enough to carry Arkansas all the way through. That Arizona team, and if you listen to John Calipari's comments after the game, they're a freight train. Man, did they put one on the Hogs last night. Holy shit. An absolute ass kicking. So I'll get through some of my thoughts on last night's game, but I haven't emptied the rando mailbag in a while. And you heard me talking about it yesterday with T when we started the show. Paul Skeens got hooked in the first inning against the Mets yesterday, 37 pitches. O'Neal Cruz brought the circus to center field for the Pirates. Well, of all the people in sports that would have had something that they thought maybe was funny to say about that, quippy, snarky to say about that, you could have gave me $1 million yesterday and 10 guesses to guess who would have made a comment. What other athlete would have made a comment about his plays in center field in the first inning yesterday in the game that the Mets went on to win? But this guy saying something about it would have never been one of my guesses. Joel Embiid, of all people to comment on anything about another athlete, this dude had time to thumb this one out yesterday morning. I don't know if it's still up. It's the beauty of the internet, folks. You know it. You put something out there, it doesn't go away. I hope somebody said, dude, what are you doing? And maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I mean, it's not like it was a personal attack or anything, but good God. Now I'm going to stock the injury report for the Sixers' next game on Saturday. Joel Embiid out. strained thumb. Talk about pot kettle. Joel Embiid, of all guys, to critique another athlete. And the comment section, if it's still up, I'm sure it's gotten even better. But as you can see there, when he posted this, and I caught it at 10:54 yesterday, it had already had 546 comments on it. And you can pretty much guess what the comment section was like. Get ready to learn Cancun, buddy. Oh, wait, you already know how that is. I mean, say something stupid like that, you deserve what comes to it. But Joel Embiid, of all the guys that would have put a tweet out like that, like I said, you could have gave me $1 million and 10 guesses and limited it to the 3 other major sports, because no other MLBer, active MLBer at least, would have said something like that. And I still wouldn't have gotten this right. Jesus. How about you stay on the floor let's go for 3 games in a row, Joel. Multiple times a year. Let's try that. Joel Embiid, get the hell out of here with that nonsense. If you missed this one this week, Brian Robinson Jr., he's signed with the Atlanta Falcons. Man, I'm glad I don't play fantasy football anymore, because every time I went to a fantasy football draft, you're around the guys, you're having a good time. Some of our leagues, you're around the guys, around the gals, like having a couple of drinks. Gets later in the draft, you're looking at some depth. Or maybe it's early in the draft and you're one of those people that showed up at all your fantasy drafts loaded. I know I did drafts with plenty of those guys before. Make sure you're drafting the right B. Robinson for the Falcons next year. And then for those of us that like to dabble here and there in touchdown bets, my goodness, is that going to be a nightmare next year? I don't know the Falcons roster makeup of numbers or anything like that, nor do I really care. We know Bijan Robinson wears number 7. Brian Robinson typically, I think, would lean on number 3. You can't put B. Robinson on the back of the jersey. Pretty sure they're not going to go B.I. and B.R. Robinson. Robinson Jr. maybe. That might help. But man, is that going to be a fantasy football nightmare for some people. And some dope will do it just for clout. He'll draft Brian Robinson Jr. with the first pick overall next year. Throw it up on social media, get the cheap clicks out of it. But what a nightmare there. Interesting tandem, though. Brian Robinson Jr. didn't get a lot of touches last year for San Francisco, primarily because Christian McCaffrey was like 96% of the Niners' offense last year. I think that's an interesting 1-2 punch there. Quarterback is an interesting 1-2 punch in Atlanta, because it'll make you want to punch yourself in the face with Tua Tagovailoa. Sorry, Raj, from our guys over at the Herb and Raj podcast. Big night for them tonight, Bama and Michigan. We'll get to that one here in a little bit. Another one, and we talk about this all the time, and I love minor league baseball. I used to work in minor league baseball. It was, I'm going to be honest with you, probably the most fun job in media I've ever had. Started as a PA announcer, ended up getting to be the radio play-by-play voice for the end of the season. You've heard me tell the story about how I met Matt Vasgersian. It was all through that whole process. But just the fun and the random goofy stuff that you see in minor league baseball. And one of the things that we've talked about on the show when we start taking the show on the road, which I'm hoping will be soon. Still got some technical stuff to work out when it comes to that. But one of the things that we've talked about is in the summertime, when we get to the doldrums of the summer and really all we have is baseball, is going on some minor league roadies and broadcasting from 2 or 3 different stadiums over the course of like 2 weeks worth of shows. Well, the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs, farm affiliate of the Philadelphia Phillies, and this is tomorrow, actually. Zach Wheeler is going to make a rehab start for the Iron Pigs. And this goes down probably as one of the funniest and best minor league promos I've seen in a long time. And there's always great ones. Every year there's great ones. The one series rebrands that some of these teams do. But he's going to make his minor league start, Wheeler is, tomorrow for the Iron Pigs. And it comes on all-you-can-eat rib day for the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. Well, why is that humorous? If you watched the Phillies game yesterday, you heard Tom McCarthy and John Kruk talking about this, and only John Kruk could have explained this in his way. But the Phillies ace, as we know, missed the latter part of 2025 due to surgery to remove a blood clot in his throwing shoulder after being diagnosed with a venous thoracic outlet syndrome. The surgery entailed removal of a rib, which, as you know by now, if you follow the Phillies well enough, like we know TJ does because they're his favorite team in the world, you're going to hear that a little bit later today on our social channels, he kept the rib, the part of the rib that was left after the removal, in his closet at home. All you can eat rehab ribs for the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs tomorrow at their game. Important times here for those of you that are in the area and thinking about going. Capital Blue Cross Tiki Terrace is your entrance gate or your area for this. Gates open at 3:15. Buffet goes from 3:30 to 6. Game time is at 4:35. Minor League Baseball, man, is something else. And if you've never gone to a minor league baseball game, you got to do it. Go find a minor league baseball series. You end up on one of these rando summer vacations. You're going to visit family. Check out where the closest minor league baseball team is in town. Not only are the logos and the gear real cool, the promos are ridiculous. That's a perfect example of one right there. Obviously, the Phil's hoping that rehab start goes well and they can get Zach Wheeler back in the fold. Christopher Sanchez, yesterday on the bump for the Phillies, looked every bit a guy who's got the potential of making a Cy Young run. Again, we're not going to overreact to anything in baseball, especially over the first couple weeks. This will carry in my conversation here with Jared Smith when he joins me just past the top of the hour here. But yesterday, Sanchez was ridiculous. Gave up no runs. He gets the win as the Phillies knock off the Rangers 5-3. 6 innings, 3 hits, no earned, 10 strikeouts, no walks. He looked every bit as good and as capable of a guy who could make a run at the National League Cy Young. Interesting stuff from around baseball yesterday. The Mariners Guardians game last night, kind of fun to watch. Didn't really go the way I thought it was going to go. But again, I think when we come off of, the high of football season and we get so close from the end of the NFL to the start of baseball, and it happens every year. The guy who's sitting up in the 400 level and, come on, Blue, how'd you miss that call? Well, we don't have to worry about that as much anymore with ABS. Don't overreact. I told you the other day, I got a bunch of text messages from friends back home. Well, you would have thought the Giants lost Game 7 of the World Series to the Yankees on opening night. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Relax. And if we know anything so far in 2026, as far as the sports calendar goes, it's been pretty freaking crazy. I mean, just think of what we've seen already on the sports calendar. We saw Indiana win the college football national championship. Iowa is in the Elite Eight in college basketball. I mean, we could go up and down the freaking list right now. It's been a pretty goofy start to the sports calendar. It's not a bad thing. I don't hate it. If the whole sports year goes like that, this could be one of the better sports years we've had in a freaking long time, man. Long time. And if it follows suit of what we've seen, Sam Darnold won a Super Bowl. Shedeur Sanders made the Pro Bowl. Whatever you think of how the Pro Bowl works right now, that's up to you. Bam Adebayo scored 83 points in an NFL game, and Iowa's in the Elite Eight. We haven't even gotten to the end of March yet. Does Iowa win a national championship? Not going to go that far. Not going to go that far. Really not going to go that far, because if Nebraska doesn't run the hidden defender trick last night, who knows how the outcome of that game goes? Problem is if you're going to run a hidden anything, you don't do it where you're giving up the other end of the basket. And you can pinpoint that play, and I've heard a lot of people pinpointing that play where Nebraska's miscommunication on the sideline, they don't get the fifth defender out Iowa was smart enough to see it, launched the ball down court, and won. Game over. A lot of people pointing to that specific play. Well, here's the thing. You still needed the defensive stop. They were still down 3. You know what you need to point yourself into? Matt Rule took some shrapnel for this too, which I thought was funny, but completely unnecessary. You can't go 5 scoreless minutes down the stretch in an NCAA tournament game. You know, and T, within the extended family, very big into Nebraska sports. He was pulling for the Huskers. You can't go 5 minutes at the end of an NCAA tournament game and not make a shot. And I didn't have the sound on that game. I had the sound on the other game, so I didn't hear it. I didn't hear what was happening live. I thought the breakaway was a little weird. Like, how the hell did he get that wide open on a play like that? But I said this to T yesterday. Nebraska goes 13 of 38 from the three-point line. We talked about Nebraska's dependency on the three-point shot. I feel like out of the 25 threes they missed like 12 of them in that 5-minute stretch. And you saw later in the game, when they needed just a quick bucket to try and extend the game, try and turn it into one of those 30-minute final 3 minutes, 30 minutes of real time, and it was all three-point line. And I get it. You literally go with what got you to the dance. I understand it. But that was the one thing we talked about, was their dependence on the three-point line, and if they weren't knocking down the shots, they were in trouble. And they weren't knocking down the shots in the second half. So obviously everybody's going to make whatever they want out of not having as many guys on the court as required, as needed. That's not why Nebraska lost that game. And it sucks. A historical year for Nebraska ball. You hate to see them go down like that. You know they hated to go down like that to Iowa. Because Iowa team's playing great basketball right now. And they're like a chameleon because they can beat you the way they did in Florida. They can beat you the way they did yesterday. They started that game horrible yesterday. Now Iowa has moved on, and they get Illinois. Outside of Susie and accounting, I don't know how many people had Iowa in Illinois in the regional final there. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I venture to guess not very many people. I think that'll be a fun game. Definitely on the Illinois side. I had Illinois in the Final Four for a reason. I didn't have them beating Iowa to get to the Final Four, but here is where we lie at this point. The other game that was going on at the same time there, and I get it, the big bitch today is game scheduling, the times of the games. Again, we always have this debate. I don't know why it's a debate. Which part of the country is the best place to watch sports on? It's the West Coast. But, like, would it be hard for us to go 7, 8, 9, and 10? Spread these games out an hour apart? I don't think so, but NCAA and scheduling times never go well together. But Texas and Purdue, in a game that Purdue tried to Purdue down the end, that Texas team, you gotta tip your caps. You know I'm not a huge fan of Sean Miller, but this team brought it when they had to. And literally 0.7 seconds away from getting that game to overtime. And I honestly think if that game goes to overtime, I think Purdue loses that game. Because Purdue was leaking oil in the last 2 minutes there. A couple of really dumb decisions. But when it came down to it, you get the ball in the guy's hands that can make the plays. And Trey Kaufman ran right guy, right time, right spot, tip in. Which was kind of deceiving because I had it on the split box. I had baseball on the other TV. I had it on the split box on YouTube TV. Which really sucks because when you go to the 4-box compared to the 2-box, the 4-box screens are bigger than the 2-box screens. I didn't know, and I saw somebody else say this on X this morning too, so I didn't feel as crazy. I didn't know the ball went in. I mean, the net didn't move on the tip in. I couldn't tell that it went in until I saw the reaction of it. But Purdue moves on. And now we've got Purdue and Arizona. I think that's a fascinating game. Off the top, I talked about it. Just an absolute steamrolling by the Wildcats over the Hogs last night. And if you've been watching long enough, the one thing I told you about Arkansas, which wasn't anything groundbreaking, Arkansas was not good on defense. They were atrocious on defense last night because they did enough offensively to stay in that game. They put up 88 points on Arizona, which is not easy to do. Granted, some of that came in junk time. Some of that came when the Arkansas players were showing their frustrations. Am I shocked that Arkansas gave up 109 points? Not at all. It sucks because that was a really good group for Arkansas. And the bad draw portion of it was the one team that for sure I thought was capable of taking them down before getting to a Final Four was Arizona. I'm still hesitant to completely believe in this Arizona team. But I think the only reason now is because we are where we are. I think Purdue and Arizona is going to be a fantastic game. You want to talk about guard play and elite guard play and what separates you in March Madness? You've got it in that game. Best point guard in the history of college basketball. By assist totals, yes. But the guard play in that game is going to be ridiculous. And then last night, we talked about Illinois not being afraid of this Houston team. We talked about it all year with Houston. They weren't as good defensively as they have been. They were better offensively. Last night, they weren't good in either area. They were able to make it a game late. But Keaton Wagler, 13 points and 12 rebounds last night. That Illinois team is deep. They're huge. And they took every advantage that they had last night and used it to their advantage. And now they get an Iowa team that I'm not saying is a pushover. But does the slipper break? Or does Ben McCollum get this team to the Final Four? Be interesting. Tonight's going to be fantastic. We made our picks yesterday with the Magic coin. If you missed it, the coin told us St. John's plus 6.5 over 173.5 in the Alabama-Michigan game. That total has dropped to 172.5 now. Michigan State and UConn was the game we were completely separate on in our thoughts. We'll replay those thoughts on our social channels here in a couple hours for you. The coin told us to go with Michigan State. And then Tennessee and Iowa State. That Iowa State team, man, continues to impress. TJ Otzelberger is one hell of a basketball coach. And I'm very interested to see how Tennessee, who has been extremely shaky in handling the basketball this year, handles that Iowa State pressure. And you can't talk about it enough, especially when it comes to March. And when it gets into the nitty-gritty of the tournament, veteran point guards. And Tamin Lipsey is about as good as they get. You're going to see some great point guards tonight, all the way across the board. Michigan State, UConn game. I mean, those two night games tonight. Let me walk that back a second. I think that if you have a blowout potential tonight, I think it's the Iowa State-Tennessee game. And I know that's saying a lot because of Rick Barnes at this time of the year. But Iowa State, I think, is going to have a pretty sizable home crowd tonight at the United Center. As will, obviously, Michigan in the first game. And again, we'll see if the injury to LJ Kaysen for Michigan, if this is where it comes out. Because we know what Nate Oates and his team is going to bring to the table. They want to run you out of the gym. Michigan can do that. Michigan can score. It's Michigan's bigs against Alabama's bigs where I think the sizable, pun intended, no pun intended, advantage is for the Wolverines. But this is where we see if that LJ Kaysen injury happens to rear its head for Michigan. Clearly the toughest task that they've faced. And Alabama's not going to be scared of the moment. I think Alabama has everything to gain and nothing to lose. Alabama knows there's a lot of people that didn't have them there. It sounds like Caleb Foster might get some minutes tonight. How effective is he going to be? I don't know. It is another body for them. But the two teams that I'm looking for tonight to see if they stay on the same path, and I have no reason to believe that they won't, that they turn the pressure up another notch, is St. John's and Iowa State. And if Duke is able to pressure back St. John's, I'm fascinated to see that, because that's the one thing that I've said a couple of times. And when you look at the run St. John's has been on, it doesn't look like this if you're just reading the box scores. But if you've watched the games, and I know there's enough of you out there that have, you've seen at times St. John's really struggle when they're getting pressured back. If Duke can throw some pressure back at St. John's, how does that affect the game tonight? I think Iowa State, again, has the potential to absolutely blow the doors off of Tennessee if Tennessee handles pressure like they've handled pressure for most of this season. And again, with Tennessee, for those that only watch college basketball at this time of year, speaking of great guards and great point guards, Jacoby Gillespie might be one of the most underrated point guards in the country for Tennessee. There is a lot of pressure on him tonight, literally and figuratively. You know, when you look at the makeup of Iowa State's team, you don't really expect high pressure out of them. It's not something that you would expect normally out of Iowa State. But this team, in the confines of how they pressure you, is elite. Just ask Kentucky. There was a reason Kentucky was up 18-6 in that game and then got the absolute crap beat out of them. Because the veteran leadership of Tamin Lipsey, and one of my favorite guys in all of college basketball off the bench for Iowa State, in Nate Heise. And the thing with Nate Heise is this. You look at, again, if you're just looking at box scores because you don't watch college basketball, and I get it. I'm not going to be a gatekeeper here. We know who watches the tournament at the beginning and who starts saying the tournament sucks. And we know who actually watches ball all year. Nate Heise, if you look at him, 5 points, 4 rebounds, not even 2 assists. Nate Heise is one of my favorite 6 men in all of college basketball. Because Nate Heise is that guy that goes out there and does every single little thing that makes a difference. In a game like this, and in Arizona, you can't bet player props in college, but in a game like this, I would be on Nate Heise's player props. Because these are the games where we see him play his best. This team at Iowa State, man, I think of all the teams that are left standing, I think this Iowa State team is the most fascinating to me, the most dynamic to me, and has the biggest upside. And you know that other thing, Vegas Mac checking in. I'll get to this in a second. I was wondering how long it was going to take him to get into this mentality with his Red Sox this year. But that Iowa State team, man, I'm telling you, they are a lot of fun to watch. Total on that one's 139.5. And I had a couple friends last night going back and forth with them on the Illinois-Houston game, and it was like, I should have bet the under. Well, easy to say in hindsight with the way the game started, but I'm not a big totals guy when it comes to unders, especially in games with pressure teams and teams that like to pressure. Because I think you flirt too much with a low total number because of the pressure that gets involved. Because you know what happens with pressure? You get easy baskets, you get easy layups, you get easy everything. So like I don't like to mess with low totals. But I could see that as the game was kind of playing itself out yesterday, and everybody was like, "Damn, I should have done that. I should have bet the under." Well, if we all should have bet something that we should have, then Vegas wouldn't have as many gold buildings as they do. The guy who busted my balls about being the reverse psychology guy on Florida, because he didn't listen to me all year when I said Florida wasn't going back to back. He's already starting. Yep, screw him. 6 innings, 3 hits, no earned, 8 Ks, 2 walks yesterday. And he was in demon mode yesterday on the mound, too. See, I know your game, Mackenzie. You use reverse psychology, but anytime somebody else tries to use reverse psychology, it's you give me the Matumbo finger on that one. That was a good game yesterday. It was a fun game. Not normally do I like low-scoring pitchers duels, but that was a fun one between the Red Sox and the Reds. I saw a great tweet, speaking of that matchup. The loser should have to wear some awful jersey shade for the rest of the year, and then in parentheses, something other than the awful jersey shades that the Red Sox have used on their alternate uniforms. So the rest of baseball, as I said, that didn't get underway yesterday or on Wednesday, underway today. That means Royals and Braves. That also means Athletics and Blue Jays from Toronto. And then opening day for the Giants and Yankees. And then finally tomorrow, we'll have everybody in action. And then on Sunday, the Giants and Yankees don't play either. So they played Wednesday, off Thursday, they play Friday, they play Saturday, they don't play Sunday. Nothing brings fans to the yard like hitting pause immediately after you start your season. I don't have the time or the bandwidth mentally at the end of this week to go into another Rob Manfred rant because it's too early in the season, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of other times for that. What do you think tonight? Sweet 16 games. What do you think of the Elite 8 games that we already know? Iowa, Illinois, that one's at 7.5, minus 7.5 for the Illini. Total on that one, 138.5. Purdue and Arizona. I believe this one opened at 5.5. I thought I saw it at 5.5 somewhere this morning. It's at 6.5 according to what I'm looking at here. Total on that one, 152.5. Plenty of empty seats at the Shark Tank last night. Nothing like the NCAA overpricing tickets again. So to steal something from Vegas Mac here, tickets at the SAP Center at San Jose for the West Regional Final between Purdue and Arizona, $156. Toyota Center in Houston, Texas. We knew this one was going to plummet without Houston there. $50 gets you in to see a couple of Big Ten rivals go at it. And here's the interesting thing. And if you look at the bracket, it's entirely possible. TJ's favorite conference. The Big 18, 19, as he likes to call it. We have a chance. We have a chance that we could have an all Big Ten final. 4. In Big Ten country. Where 7 of the Sweet 16s were from. We know we're getting one Big Ten team there. The winner of Iowa and Illinois. Feel like I don't have to say that, but in this day and age of college sports, you kind of have to remind people who's in what conferences at times. Michigan State can carry that flag out of their region. Purdue, they can get there out of the West region. Obviously, Michigan can get there out of the Midwest region. And there is still that possibility that we could have Michigan and Michigan State in the national title game. I don't know how that would go over outside the state of Michigan. I'm a tournament junkie. any potential championship matchup that is left, and I get it. I'm gonna piss off one part of the country. I understand. I don't have a whole lot of desire to see Iowa in a national championship game. Maybe that's for personal reasons. Still bent. More bent at how Florida handled the end of that damn game than anything. Iowa is the one team that's left in the mix here. It's a fun story. They don't do anything for me. I can't wait to see the games in D.C. tonight. We know, if you've been watching the show this week, Mac wants to see UConn St. John's. TJ wants to see Michigan State and Duke. I kind of want to see St. John's and Michigan State, I'm not going to lie. I think that game tonight between Michigan State and UConn, like I said, like T and I talked about yesterday, I think it's total toss-up. I mean, you know, when you look at Cohen Carr and what he's been able to do for Michigan State, and Jeremy Fears and what he's been able to do for Michigan State. So Mac wants all Big East. T wants... I don't think T would care if it's St. John's and Michigan State either. He just doesn't want to see the all Big East final. But I think outside of Iowa, for me, and it's been a great story, it's been a great ride. I'm sure that they're going to be consistently good, assuming that Ben McCollum stays. Since North Carolina thinks they can have everybody right now, and Kansas thinks they can have everybody if they have an opening. I think he stays. I think he's extremely happy at Iowa. I think it gives him enough of the feel of where he came up through the coaching ranks and an opportunity to build something sustainable there. I hope he stays. It was funny. Last night he blew up an expo marker and a whiteboard. He's turned himself into a GIF with his antics, trying to get his team rallied at the beginning of the game, and it worked, man. It worked. Don't give him inanimate objects when he's upset. I used to know a coach like that. Maybe chucked an expo marker or whiteboard here and there from time to time. He was a riot. I know if there's somebody watching in Colorado specifically right now, they know exactly what I'm talking about there. But, you know, it's fascinating to me. I think Iowa's the only team that could get to the national title game that I'd be like, eh. But I can be swayed. They could compel me here. They could play another fascinating, tough, gritty game against a very good Illinois team, and they could get there. And I'd be like, all right. I think it's been great. I think and last night they had every reason to do one of two things. To come in and have a total letdown after the high of beating Florida, or to fold like a cheap suit with the way they started that game. And they didn't do either one of them. Now, you could say maybe, if you wanted to, and I don't think this is accurate, at the beginning of the game they were playing like they were coming off of a high from playing Florida, and were reading their own press clippings, but I don't think that's what happened. I think Nebraska came out and did exactly what we thought they were going to do. They came out hot. Live by the three, die by the three, man. It is what it is. Last night they died by it at the end of the game. But you don't go back on anything like that. You don't change what got you to the literal dance. If I could handpick a national title game that I think I would love to see, I don't know how popular this one would be. And as I said, you can slice this pie any way you want to right now. And again, for the, this tournament has sucked crowd. Yeah, it's been a rough couple weeks for you, or a couple of rounds for you. I think that the matchup I'd love to see is probably St. John's and Iowa State. But again, I don't know if there's anywhere you can go bad here. Think if we get Arizona and UConn again. That was a great game earlier this season. You can't really put a combination together that I think is bad here. But the Big Ten would love that feather in their cap. The Final Four being in Big Ten country. To have an all Big Ten Final Four, and you're going, has that ever happened before? Come on. You know your boy at this point. Of course I looked it up, because I was curious for the same damn reasons last night. And now because I need it, I'm not going to find it in my mess of stuff here, but it has happened. It's been a long time since it happened. To be correct, it was 1976 the last time that it happened. But it has happened. Oh, this is my phone and my other file not syncing together. I know where it is. This comes from our guy Bart Torvik last night on X. Big Ten hasn't had all four teams, English is easy, in the Final Four since 1976. There's a caveat to that. Indiana, Michigan, UCLA, and Rutgers. Calm down. Don't send it my way. I know UCLA and Rutgers weren't in the Big Ten then, but that's why he put an asterisk next to it. But that would be great for business in Indy. The Final Four is great for business, period. It would be great for business in Indy to get an all Big Ten Final Four. I don't think it's going to happen, but it would be great for business in Indy. I don't think there's a bad matchup that happens. We just see what happens. But here's a guy that's going to join me now. You hear him on Fox Sports Radio. You have seen him all over X. You have heard us talk about him on X. He's the host of the Morning After Pod. Also the QB Read, which I believe is on Substack. Don't hate me, Jared, if I'm wrong, but Jared Smith joins me on the program. Now, what's going on, man?
Hey, man. Yeah, Substack. So I was told by some social media people that I should have a Substack. I don't really do a whole lot of long form writing, so I started that because football is really the only thing I feel like I know enough about to do long form. But yeah, Substack, Patreon, YouTube. I mean, I think that's the best advice I have for anyone out there these days is diversify, because there's just so many platforms out there. You got to figure out a way to get your name out there. But it's great to be here, Mike. I know you guys have been really positive and supportive, so I'm always trying to get back to people who've given to me. So I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate your time, man. We appreciate the content you put out. I know from a personal side with me, when we started this journey here, you were one of the first people that I told the guys, I'm like, go follow him. That's follow awesome, him. Man. And we get it going. So let's get into the basketball side of things to start here. How is your March Madness going? And I know you and I have kind of echoed the same sentiments for the this tournament sucks crowd. How is your March Madness going to this point?
Fantastic. It's changed for me over the years. Like it used to be more bracket heavy, right? Like I used to take a lot of time and try to analyze every team and every upset and try to figure out how to curate the perfect bracket. I used to have multiple brackets. Now over the last few years that I've been more into the betting side, the bracket's kind of taken a back seat. And I'm just trying to figure out how to make good bets. I'm trying to figure out if there's teams that are undervalued coming into the tournament, the teams that are overvalued. I'm trying to stay away from the trendy upset picks. I'm trying to use the market to judge who is maybe going to make a deep run. A great example of this could be, when a lower seeded team is favored or a team that, maybe you don't think of in terms of the seed line, and the seedings are pretty much irrelevant, but the market's saying this team's really good, but the seeding isn't, so like that's kind of where I'll look to these days. But I think it's a fun tournament. It's changed. It's not as upset driven now as it used to be, and that's NIL's contributed to that. But the games are just as exciting. I know we had one day that was kind of a bore, kind of a dud day, but I would argue that those are really good teams playing at their highest level. And then we get to the later rounds and all those teams face each other and then it all becomes moot. So it's been an awesome tournament. I think this weekend's going to be great. I think next weekend's going to be elite. I think Arizona's the best team that I've watched so far. They seem to have the highest ceiling. I think Michigan and Duke and Illinois are right there. But Arizona seems to be the best team right now from what I can glean.
Yeah, last night, man, just an absolute freaking freight train. And not that any of us are shocked that Arkansas couldn't play any defense, but even like you listen after the game and Calipari's like, they're good. I told my coaches this was a bad matchup. Yeah, it looked every bit as bad of a matchup as you thought it was going to be. You were on Iowa with the point spread against Florida. Yeah. What have you seen from this Iowa team for anybody that's, and you know how it gets at this time of the year, and one of the things that we really tried to do with the show when we started, and we say it all the time, we're not handicappers. We don't do this for a living. We're going to get as many wrong as we're going to get right here. But I know the momentum, and you know how this goes. What do you make of this Iowa team going forward here for the people that are going to jump on who is, quote, your Cinderella, if you can, out of a Big Ten conference team?
Very well coached, long, athletic, much more, much more athletic and explosive than you would expect Iowa to be. When you think Iowa, our brains default to football, punting, kicking, defense. This is a team that does run at a relatively slow tempo, but they are highly efficient. One of the metrics that a lot of the pros like to look at when they try to judge offensive efficiency is your EFG percentage, which is something that can be found on KenPom. Essentially, it's saying how effective of a field goal shooting team are you, both twos and threes. Well, they're a top 20 team in the country in that category. And they're also top 50 in average height. So that's why they were a bad matchup for Florida, who is not as guard heavy, much more big focused. And they matched up really well with Florida. Frankly, I thought they got a little fortunate last night. Nebraska went very cold in the second half. Nebraska started out super hot in that game. And then just fell apart in the second half. Fred Hoiberg had a brain fart and only had 4 guys on the floor. Like that game could have gone either way last night. It just bounced Iowa's way. But take nothing away from Iowa. They deserve to be here. But I'll be honest, they're legit. I think Illinois is the Final Four team in that region. I didn't see the line open 7.5. So they played a pretty tight game in Iowa City back in January. And it was a game that I think this Illinois team has grown up a lot, right? They're a relatively young Illinois team with a lot of bigs and a lot of overseas players. So a team like that compared to where they were in mid-January, compared to where they are in basically April, is very different. So I think this Illinois team has improved dramatically over the course of the last 2 months. And you saw it last night against Houston. And I think Illinois wins that game. Do they cover? Maybe. But I think Illinois is probably the Final Four team in that region.
Let's look at tonight here real quick, and you don't have to give me picks here. I'm not asking for that. But like when you look at the makeout of tonight, to me, the one I see, and I was talking about this a little bit earlier, that has a potential to be a blowout game to me is Iowa State and Tennessee, because Tennessee's inability to handle pressure this year has been kind of an Achilles heel, and I don't think people are giving Iowa State the credit for the pressure that they bring to the table. Is there something that really jumps out of the 4 games other than the East Regional in DC is ridiculously good tonight?
I mean, honestly, all the teams left, all 16 teams that were left in the field, Mike, are all good in their own way. They all bring something different to the table. And then now that we get to this round, it's all about matchups. And you said it, Tennessee struggles to hold on to the ball. They're outside the top 200 in turnover percentage. They don't shoot free throws well. So those are little things that you have to do well against Iowa State. Now, Iowa State is a team that, for the most part, doesn't foul a ton, but they are a team that is a little bit banged up. We'll see how Jefferson looks tonight. I think that's going to be key, but I think they're good without him, frankly. This Iowa State team, I think they're going to the Final Four. I really do. I think the matchup against Michigan in the next game is really tough. And I think Michigan, if you ask me if there's going to be one blowout tonight that I bank on, I think it's Michigan over Bama. I think the 3-point variance is just really tough to predict. If I knew if the 3-point shots were going to fall, I would be on an island in Tahiti somewhere, retired already at age 40. But this is a Michigan team that they just have the ability to bludgeon you inside. And Alabama has not fared well against teams that can shoot it well from inside the arc. It's something that it's a bugaboo for them. And they were scorching hot from three against Texas Tech. They shot 45% in that game. We saw this last year in the Sweet 16. They couldn't miss against BYU, shot almost 50%. 2 days later against Duke, shot 25%, lost by 20. So the 3-point variance with Bama is really tough to predict. But unless they're shooting it at 45%, I think Michigan's going to score a lot of points tonight. And now we've seen that number stretch out to 9.5. Like I bet Bama early at 10.5, and I got back in at Michigan at 8.5. So I'd love it if the game landed 9 or 10, but I put more on the Michigan bet because I do think Michigan is the right side of this game tonight.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. A little bit more time here with Jared Smith. You've heard him on Fox Sports Radio, the QB Read, the Morning After Pod, all over X. You've heard us talk about him plenty of times on the show. Happy to have him here today. You know, one of the things that I got, and I know I got this from you back in the day, in just something I heard from you a little while ago, and I was trying to explain this to some of my friends. So you mentioned Iowa State, and I do agree with you. I like them going to the Final Four out of that spot. And I think what happens a lot, and this is really what we're trying to do on the show, is teach people that are new to betting different ways to look at things. I grabbed Iowa State on, I can't even tell the day now. It was 5 days ago to reach, to win the Midwest region at plus 290. Now, nice. Assuming that we know that Michigan and Iowa State are going to match up in that game, it's highly unlikely that Iowa State is going to be, I think, a plus 290 in that matchup against Michigan, because I think they're two very good teams. How do you take strategy later in the tournament and stuff like that to try and find yourself an extra edge? And I think that's the biggest thing that I know when I was a new bettor, that like there's always an extra edge. You got to do a little homework for it.
Risk tolerance. It's all what your risk tolerance is. I've built up a bankroll at, doing this for a few years now, where I don't feel as inclined to protect my wagers as much. Whereas early on, when I'd have a bigger bet on something, I would want to come back and take a little bit off the top, because I don't want to lose the bigger bet, especially if I have a chance to middle, which is really what you want to do. And the pros love doing that. In fact, a lot of the pros will intentionally, for example, a common misconception is that the public moves the line. Like, oh, the public is betting this, so that means the line's going to move. That's not true most of the time. There are exceptions. With a game like, tonight, a Sweet 16 game that, the public isn't overly in hammering. Like, if it's not like a Super Bowl or national championship, for the most part, the public doesn't move the line. So a game like tonight, let's say the Sharps really like Iowa State at 3. Well, the line's sitting 3.5 right now. So a big whale bettor who's known sharp and who has the respect of the sports books here in town, especially, and there's really only a handful of sports books that really originate lines. One of them, Circa, Westgate. There's a couple of offshore books that originate lines. They will intentionally bet the other side, knowing that the sports book will move off of their action. So let's say that the line at Circa is Iowa State minus 3.5, but the Sharps really like Iowa State at 3. So they'll make a small bet on Tennessee plus 3.5. The book will move to Iowa State 3, and then the bigger bet will come in on Iowa State, and then you'll see it move back to 3.5 or 4. That is a very common strategy that Sharps will implement. So line movement, reverse line movement, all this stuff, like it could be weird to kind of, use that as a gauge for what the sharp side is. But each personal bettor has to make an assessment of what their risk tolerance is. So if you have a massive bet on Iowa State plus 290, 2, 3, 4 times your usual stake, you're like, I love this Iowa State team, and that's a great number. I'm going to bet plus 290. Then we get to the Elite Eight, and you're one win away, and Iowa State, let's say they're a 3-point dog. I don't know. Michigan's maybe like a minus 150, minus 160, minus 170 money line against Iowa State. You have to make that assessment yourself. How much am I willing to lose on this? If the question is, it's not a big bet, I'm willing to lose it all, you probably should just let it ride. If it's not life-changing money, typically I just let it ride. If it's a massive wager that is, relatively life-changing money, then I will come back on the other side and protect myself a little bit. So that's a long-winded way of saying that it's all about your personal risk management and risk tolerance. And that's usually how I approach those situations.
All right. I got to do it just because this was one of my favorite things, and this was all spearheaded by you last year, and how I really fell in love with this market. It's a new baseball season. Everybody's excited to bet a new baseball season. And, one of my guys on the show, Vegas Mac, he hasn't got me into it because the bet drives me freaking crazy because there's too much on the fly math, but it's pitcher outs during games. Not a big
Oh,
fan of
okay.
that.
I like that one.
Yeah, he likes to bust my chops on it. But you have earned the nickname of the father of first innings. How do you attack betting baseball season and tell the people that don't know, who haven't listened to me enough to follow you, where that nickname came from?
Dustin Sweetelson from VSiN. Congrats on his engagement, by the way. He just got engaged. Great
Oh,
dude.
nice.
One of the good guys in the space. I recommend reaching out to him to have him on too. I'm sure he would oblige. Um, it's kind of funny because I don't really consider myself like a baseball sharp. I played baseball growing up. I love betting it. I probably have been betting baseball longer than any other sport. It was the first sport that I bet. And I do think there are edges in baseball. I don't think the Nerfy is an edge. What the Nerfy is, right? The no-run first inning. That's where the nickname came from. It came from this obsession that the public had with this wager. And the reason why the public has an obsession with this wager is because it's quick. It's you're in, you're out. It's a short, right? We live in a very short attention span society. It's a 15, 20-minute bet. It's exciting. It's one run. And the public perception is, oh, it's only 6 outs. Like, it should be, the Nerfy should hit most of the time. When in reality, the first inning is actually the highest scoring inning on average in baseball historically. So there's this like weird, sharp, square dichotomy to it. And a few years ago, when it was really starting to become popular, like nobody really bet the Nerfy in 2019 or 2020, like right around that time when gambling became legalized and people were looking for ways to bet baseball that was not sit around and watch a 9-inning slog fest. This was before pitch clock, before the game got quicker. The Nerfy was like all the rage. And what I was learning when I was first starting out doing gambling content was there wasn't a lot of information available about it. It was just, oh, this looks like a good bet. 2 good pitchers. Let's bet the Nerfy. So what I did was I started tracking it on a daily basis. And I spent hours and hours and hours every day tracking the pitchers, tracking the offenses, seeing which teams were good first inning teams, which teams were bad first inning teams, which pitchers were good, which pitchers were bad. And I would put out charts and spreadsheets about this. And that is what earned me the nickname, the father of first innings. Now that there are other, like, for example, there's this really great website, and I've partnered with them, I've collabed with them before, that does all this automatically, all this data. I don't do as much research on this market as much anymore. I do like betting it. It's fun. I like the first 5 wagers personally, and totals. I think baseball totals are a good way to approach the market. You have to handicap the bullpens when you're doing full games, but the first 5s, you're handicapping the starting pitchers and the offenses and props. I think baseball props, pitcher props especially, I think those are my favorite ways to bet baseball. So there's definitely a market for the Nerfy. It's a maddening wager. I like to post about it. I've earned a nickname about it. It's not something that I do. Like, I don't risk a lot of money on it, but it is definitely fun. And I appreciate all of the attention and support that I've received for it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you kind of led me to my last one here for you. The state of gambling as a whole right now, and you've been one of the more outspoken people about this, and you've known me through the social channels long enough. I'm not going to just blow smoke here, but the perception of how sports gambling is in its space now, and the people that are trying to use it as their pulpits to just smear stuff. You've seen this literally evolve and grow and continue to grow, and now we have prediction markets and all that nonsense in. Where are you at on the state of sports gambling as a whole right now? Because I think this is the thing that especially our new bettors that follow us really need to hear more than anything.
It's a good question. I think there's 2 ways to approach it. I think if you are a non-gambler and you are trying to figure out what this is all about, I think it's a tough time for you. I do. If you're like, for example, if you're a sports fan, you've been a sports fan for years, everyone's talking about gambling and you're like, I want to give it a try. I want to, do some research and get some information about how I can maybe start gambling. I think it's really challenging to cipher through the noise, and you're being led down roads like SGPs and prediction markets and things that are more complicated and more complex, and you're not going to win. And I think that's where the average Joe sports fan who's trying to get involved in gambling is probably up against it. I think for people who have been betting for a really long time and now it's mainstream and you're kind of adapting to this new mainstream world, I think it's frustrating. It's frustrating because you're hearing things from mainstream media that are just not true. Like it's just bullshit. Like if I can curse on your show.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it's pure bullshit. Gambling is not the problem. The act of gambling is not the problem. Just like the act of drinking is not what leads to deaths from alcohol poisoning or drinking and driving. It's the decision making and how it's framed. That's the problem. There will be bad actors in every space, no matter what space it is. Everything could be used as an addiction these days. Sugar, alcohol, drugs, tobacco, gambling, everything's an addiction. Your phone. How it's presented to the audience is the problem. And the self-control, the discipline that the people using it have or don't have. Those are the two biggest problems that I think a lot of people who, for example, me, I used to have a gamble. I used to be a degenerate, like really degenerate. I used to steal my mom's credit card when I was young, stupid. Now that I've worked in the space for a long time, and I've also changed other aspects of my life, my diet, my fitness, I've become more of a disciplined individual with my lifestyle. I don't abuse it. So when I turn on the TV and see Fox News doing a story about some 20-year-old kid that, ran down the same dark path that I ran down, I get frustrated because the message is wrong. The message should be, here's what not to do. Here is how you can avoid this. The message shouldn't be, look how bad gambling is. Look at this person. He ran his life amok. You could say that about anything. Like you could find any addiction and you could find the bad actor, the worst of the worst, put them in the spotlight and say, look how bad and terrible this is. But that's the wrong way to frame it to your audience. If you are trying to help the problem, the right way to frame it to the audience is, here is what you shouldn't do. Here is someone who is doing it in a positive way. Follow what they're doing instead of bringing on the negative stories and just spinning it in the negative way. So we are very susceptible to what we see in the media today, and how it is presented to the audience is vital. And that's why I feel like my job is important. Why people like you having podcasts like these that preach positive, responsible gambling is important, because there's so much noise and there's so much negativity out there. It needs to be framed in a better way.
For those of you that have watched the show long enough, you know now why I've spoken about Jared, and we've spoken about Jared as we have. Man, that was a long time coming. Tell everybody where they can find you, where else they can find you, what else they can get into. Go ahead and pimp your stuff, man. That's what we do on this program.
I appreciate it, bud. Really, the best place to find me is at Jared Smith Bets. I put the handle there at the bottom. On X, Instagram too. That's usually I'm a little more personal, a little more, my personal journey a little bit more on Instagram than I don't post a ton of gambling stuff or a ton of work stuff on Instagram. I do have a picks platform, $20 a month on Patreon. I post a lot of charts and graphs and, a lot of other non-gambling stuff on there too sometimes, but that's where, if you want to follow what I'm betting on every single day, that is where I post all of that content. And then the podcast, that's really been my passion project recently. That's where I go on a lot of rants, like I just went with you right now, and you can subscribe to it on YouTube, and I would appreciate all of you guys tuning in. Usually I record once, maybe twice a week, depending on what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. All right, I'm gonna get out with you on this one. So to everybody that's with us, we appreciate you. We appreciate guys in this space like Jared especially. We'll be back with you on Tuesday. By now you know the drill. Happy basketball weekend and baseball weekend, and just enjoy the damn thing. There's too many things going on to not enjoy them. You know the drill by now. For everybody behind the scenes of Mike, we're out.